Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I think my sister is unfortunately just a dangerous person for me to know and for my mom to know, but unfortunately, selfishly, in terms of me and my relationship with my mom, which is critical to my quality of life, actually. And my sister gives a lot of evidence of things are okay now, and so I've dealt with my mom's alcoholism. Now I'm dealing to the level, essentially, at least as it affects me, I think of a mental illness in the realm of narcissistic sociopathy, my sister. I don't think it's always that marquee type of thing, but I think if we got more detailed about how these things affect us, I don't think the government wants you to know what a narcissistic sociopath is. And gay people or heterosexual people are lots of different types of people. A narcissistic sociopath are lots of different types of people for very honestly developed reasons. So there's a combination of reasons and things that we're all just each other's psychiatrist every day in terms of what you're really encountering from time to time, right? And you're not the only one with needs. You might think, gee, I don't want to be a crazy person that needs special help from society. But you might meet people from time to time who are. And they're not meth addicts or drugs. They're all over the place. No one ever does a job serving the public around here, among whom there aren't some great number who need a lot more than you think on the surface to do their job. That makes you feel like you're doing their job for them. And you're supplying, all the maturity in that relationship. And how that can happen. And it's not fully bad about you, and it's not fully good about you, but it is something people do and they have to. And the more you do and you have to, the less you really acknowledge yourself. Like, take it from someone who doesn't work for money a lot, but needs to, and has kept himself occupied nonetheless for all of his adult life. That's pretty cool. Sometimes you just have to say it the right way, and I'm not very good at telling people about my life. Like, I'm sure my grandpa in heaven and my uncles and aunties would say, I kind of wish I'd lived the way Landon does. It wasn't so scary. I wish it would become a little more popular, and then more people could do it, and more people who could probably be very useful in generating themselves. Maybe aren't going to find a way to do that. And maybe a way to proceed would be also to include other people like myself and say, I'm interested in learning income. I don't want to have a YouTube channel where I'm a life coach. I want to be I do have things to offer, and I do need to generate an income. And I'm not particularly inclined to go on how to make a YouTube video and present to you the best person I can, to get you to give me money and subscriptions. I really have the benefit in a sense of focused on taking care of myself and what I consider my life issues, and what I would like to think are the sacred components of things that I might be accused of obsessing about. Because I claim it hurts. And how hard it is to say you hurt to other human beings, even with 25,000 videos. I hurt. I want to tell you how much I hurt. I want to tell myself. I want to try to deal with the terror of just how much I've been hurt. Right? And providing that we can reasonable and respectful idea of how much I hurt, more than I even know perhaps, every day of my life. And what I think I know about why I hurt and how I hurt. And everything else I do, though not disconnected from all my hurt, that I hope to help with all my hurt. It makes me even hurt more, and I learn deeper and deeper things that I can't control. So I deal with by trying to banish energy and stave off negative energies by noticing and essentially talking back to them in a way that, as a poet, as a writer, philosopher, I talk about, or I'm talking back to myself. I'm talking back to the worst ways that my own father have ever treated me, and said, I think I need to talk to you, Father. I need to talk through an awful, shocking impression you made on my mind, because it can tell me that when people hurt us, the shock is something they've done that can tell us something that we don't want to hear. And certainly it says, stay away from me, or don't do that again. But it also says, my brain doesn't necessarily think about you the way you deserve. That should give you enough signals for your brain to know that you're preserved against any unnecessary harm or humiliation that can't be compensated for by a certain amount of obedience and trust that you will learn over time that this was actually okay. Do you understand? So when it tells you that, what else is it going to tell you? And nobody hears, and the doctors don't hear, and the priests don't hear, and the Christians don't hear, and all the soothsayers of the world don't hear what your father's brain is telling you. And all the books that you go to the library, from Castaneda to Self-Defeating Habits to Dianetics and philosophies and whatnot, all over the fucking place. No one is talking about what your father might be telling you. That augurs a good deal of violence in the future. Because somehow, someone as innocent and wonderful as you, who might have been joking around and playing at the table as he did, precisely because there was some continual threat to the well-good of the family that had been imported by various lengths and austerities and renunciations to which my father and mother had gone, and quite credibly under the wonderful umbrella of just working and being part of the millions of people who just live and work and die. And anything else you want to say about it, well, that's superfluous. Because the world has already pronounced you born, useless, useful, and dead. And that's all you need to do, and you're a fucking statistic. Right? And whatever else you think is a fucking fantasy. And you get the pleasure of fantasizing about being anything more important than that. And walking around the stage until you fall off the fucking end of it. Because that was imagined for you, and nothing more, by every measure of your so-called world. And all the universe thereof. Going where no man, which is you, has gone before, over and over again, over the edge of too much of the parasitical nature of a debt-laden economic command of human flesh and blood. And like any cult, because it's for our survival, it's a way of life, the world helps us survive, as bad as it is what we. And yet I'm someone who has to generate an income in that world, having developed a very critical attitude toward it. So kind of brings us around to a pretty fateful hour, and to find the practical value of my days, as much as they have been desperate to have essential value on my well-being in ways that no paid labor has yet been able to, so, or afforded the opportunity to, or me, a path where I would generate money, which would also make me safer. But this has to be changing time in my life, because it's going to be either way. So. And that's scary. But I'm kind of starting to kind of calming myself. Like, hey, the fear of working all of my life. There are jokes about that, Fear of working, fear of a day's work. I've done a day's work with a psycho. Ever done a day's work and looks as a psychopath? 25-year-old psychopath started his own Cobb house building, went to California, learned about alternative building, right? Smart. He's in my house, he's renting a room. He doesn't like the rent he's paying, although we negotiated, I was very honest with him, right? I live on welfare, I have to maintain this house. Part of having a roommate is, you get the big bedroom, you pay an extra $100 or $200, right? Well, he doesn't like that because he can give the whole house to himself, but it's not his. So that starts our relationship in a tipsy state. It doesn't matter that I've been open with him, he hates my guts. But there's more. He tells me a story one day about being at the UBC campus and his mom leaving him there and driving away. And that this was something she would routinely do, is abandon him. That's important, because narcissistic sociopaths will sustain a need, compulsion to let you know about some extremely awful thing which their mom or dad did to them, or someone they know. It was just, and it encompasses like a terror. It's, as it is, it pretty much is all that's left to explain everything about them. It's like a part of their brain died, and that was the key that opened it up. Don't the dead keep this place? And then one day he's telling me about how he manipulates his and plays games with them. And then he starts showing me the real thing. And I feel that. I really feel that. You know, an alcohol type person, they'll put like a flea under your blood and then go away and just leave you to simmer. You know, put you a question in your mind, get under your skin, just to throw you off your game because you don't deserve to feel secure. And if I can make you feel insecure, I have power over you, and you should know that because now I'm your boss. You're going to learn how to be my employee. Who do you think you are? Boss of people. That's what I do. I can't control myself. That's who I need to be. If you're around that, and you're in the same house with someone like that, that's scary. What's scary is that I was used to it. That's kind of what made me capable of living around these people. That's why I didn't. Plus, I needed the rent. Is that I just go to my room, and it turned out okay. He did a few more weird things. I had a brief discussion with him about making sure that we were properly, or I didn't want us to have any problems with communication. And you pay them, and that's what happens. And you don't ask me to do weird things for you. I get it, but of course he resented it. And he got me back by planning an elaborate dinner on the last day of my rental agreement, while I was using up all the dishes in the house, getting me to pay for the lobster, inviting some weird friend of his over, and then I had to do all the dishes and clean up afterwards. Basically got me to do almost everything, like his employee. And even after that, wouldn't leave the house and wanted to stay another night. I had to kick him out. No thank you, no nothing. And it was okay because I knew what he was. And, why not have a dinner? It was a good idea, right? I just sort of went with the flow. Because you know what? They need to get theirs anyway. They have to. If it wasn't this, it'd be something else. He'd steal something, So it's like, you can feel the energy behind it, right? Territorial. And the girl that he invited, she would later sort of be a bit weird too. She was an engineer, so like him, she had come up from the poorer classes, but had got an engineering degree. But, you tend to inhabit these rural, green, cob house sort of worlds for a reason, because like cult psychology tells us, it doesn't matter what group you join, it's all about the reasons you join it, right? What you're getting away from, right? In the West Coast, people's environment allows them to kind of be themselves in a strange sort of sense. And so the reason that they're out here is given a chance to influence the way that they are. And so you have a lot of cults, a lot of health cults, magical cults, new age cults. I think you'll find that in every lower populated area, certainly on the West Coast, that you have a very cult health mentality, vegan, spas, a lot of occupations or enterprises that require suspension of disbelief, yoga schools, vipassana, right, you name it, healing, magical beliefs, and also lowered sexual inhibitions, right? People find a way to lower their inhibitions. In people's adherence politically, in their gender identity, there's always lowered inhibitions and really strong principles at the same time, right? Because the survival track of every human has just quite credibly sustained a lot of challenges to their survival that go to the level of their primal relationships when they were born. So, denial has to be a part of it. The suspension of disbelief, the lowering of inhibitions, languages of aggression, economic languages. They could speak out of 10 sides of their mouth. It didn't matter. It's like elbowing people in basketball. It's okay as long as you can get away with it. People are allowed to be aggressive. The way they talk, the way they behave, protects their survival. It's called class. It's called dialect. It's called region. It's called, based on where you're born in England is a big part of who you are and how you talk, your principles, right? which are also kind of a religion, I suppose. Because the reason that you join groups and become a certain kind of socialized person involves things that affect cults as much as they affect any major human group subsequent to the original family group, and beginning, in many respects, in certain types of complex and overwhelming industrial demands upon and insinuations to and interpolations into the womb, language, song, history, flesh and blood, and sense of time, reality, identity, sexuality of the original family group and all the labors thereof. You look around, you listen to the people, you look at the people, you spend enough years getting to know people, whether you like them or not, and I think you get to get a fairly good sense of the human race. And you know why I wrote at the end of Epipsychidion that his purpose in life was to love yourself and fear all humankind. Take charge of yourself. There's some value, he's suggesting, as he would well know, there's some value in, like Justin or some famous actor said to some girls at a teenage event. They weren't listening, but he was like, don't let your reality own you. Don't let your reality just be created for you. It could also prey on you. It's the truth to allow. It's okay to be afraid of humans. Humans accept all kinds of things. We accept all kinds of things every day, between childhood and new age that we turn. Hang out with middle-class people, single moms, and that, in a way I should be much more generous with, in a way that I guess my occupation programs me, relies upon being thoroughly shocked by. People have taken desperate measures down deep into their mind and through their personality to survive things that, maybe aren't that good for humans. The worst of which really aren't provided any great necessity to hear what you have to say about it. It's kind of built in such of oppression. As we understand it more by its effects than by its confessions in the public realm. It's passive aggressive, right? It's not obvious. And nor is the world conditioned by it to feel very much or to think much about it. The average working person does not think about being oppressed, right? But they do think a lot about being relieved of their oppression and what presses upon them, and the gravity of the situation. Trying to find a way, if you may say, for the sake of personal meditation, how to account for the different things that press on our minds, and what we have to, and what we may have the luxury of considering about what should have to force us into one occupation or attitude or another, that we bear this or that every day, and do this and are moved by that, this stick and that carrot. It all makes sense to think. As long as it makes sense to them, it's good for everybody. And maybe the life should produce some money. But I am interested in what I have to offer in the money of a life that has the need to generate money, but has yet to generate any at the age of 50. And all the other occupations. It's weird. I'm not, it's weird. I'm weird. I'm weird. I am weird. I'm not weird. I think weird. I'm different from everybody. Right? And isn't that really the big deal about being weird? If I wasn't so different, I never fit in high school, which is hard. I mean, I didn't think about how hard it was, but I think it affected me. And I didn't even get along with the geeks. Even they were cooler than I was. I'd see them going out for beer, high school, post-high school, college. They got all their accounting degrees. They all had jobs in banks or accounting offices by the time they were 16. They knew what they wanted to do, and they didn't come from like, they weren't like the jazziest, but they were smart. Their families had values, and they were going to fit into society, even if they didn't really fit into school as well, or they didn't look like it. You know, Mike Olson walked like he had a stick up his ass. I mean, it was amazing. I remember I wasn't really that interested in men's asses, but there was something unmistakable about the way Mike Olson would walk, like he had a stick up his ass everywhere he went. It's an incredible, like someone was grabbing his balls, and he had to walk around anyway. I mean, it was like he had a sort of bounce in his step. You know, he wore very tight pants, and so you could see like how puckered his ass was. I mean, it was like, you know, and how he carried himself and the stiff turn of his, you know, his neck, and you know, he was free within a certain extent. Like you could see he was okay, he was happy, but it's like the world had certainly gripped him. He wore very tasteful clothes. His parents were in their 60s or 70s. You know. I think I went to his house once, or you know, nerd adjacent, Peter Wright. I went into his house. He was all about and video games and X-wing fighters. I mean, he had a level of awareness of the keystrokes and everything. You could see that was like quite advanced. It was like you would expect someone to have the same awareness as that who flies a rocket ship or a jumbo jet. I was impressed. You know, he didn't really show me his world. We didn't really play a video game, but we just sat out and he chatted about one thing or another. Peter Wright had a tremendous amount of oral and dental work that had been applied to him. He seemed to always have something over his mouth that looked roughly like a football helmet when you were up close to him. He had tons of acne. He walked with a kind of hump in his back that he'd just given up ever really being a virile human being in any real sense. Big feet, you know. If he'd stood straight, you know, and just did a little more exercise and tonified himself, maybe learned how to by looking him in the eyes a little bit more, he would be a completely different human being. You know, there was just evidence that this person had been tortured all of their life. That the container that you live in basically becomes you. Forget becoming what you eat. You become, you know, it applies, right? But I'm sure Peter Wright has a nice life. I mean, he was going to work at something. He was quite capable of spending any number of hours in front of a computer. I'm sure he's doing something related. And who knows, he might have changed entirely. Because he certainly was someone who could work and make money. So at some point he probably figured a few things out, loosened up a little bit and whatnot through hard work, and maybe even met a nice girl, you know. But to watch Peter walk around, someone, you know, that I could be friendly with, because I'm pretty geeky myself and I had a huge acne problem, so I could certainly understand Peter's plight in some unspoken way. We sat in his computer room. Two very different people from very different worlds, but you know, I don't know if he had any brothers or sisters. Their houses, when I would go to my friends' houses, one and all, they were like morgues or monasteries. The quietness, the cleanness, they were like churches to human sobriety compared to my home. They were like glaringly sober, you know, sober as a judge when you went in there. Like, it's like their great grandparents had mastered the sciences relevant to cleaning products and had lived lives of pure Mr. Green-like sanctity. It was just like, they were giants of compliance, you know what I mean? I mean, even their appliances seemed cleaner than mine, you know? Like, I could take my appliances to their house and they would become cleaner appliances, you know? The dishwasher would get our plates a little bit cleaner. It just, everything had that Christian whiteness, that Pentecostal sort of greatness to it all. And yet, just what I liked about it was the only thing I could like about church, that trapped and as asphyxiating as it was. At least nobody was asking you to be social and there were no girls. Nothing too exciting. And I liked that. And that's what made it okay for me. I could go to their houses now and then because it was like, I didn't need excitement. Still strange and uncomfortable as they were, at least they weren't too exciting. Nothing too much, we weren't, you know, he wasn't going to take me out on his 911 Porsche. I'm going to go and, you know, hit up some babes and a party down, having a kegger, which would have been terrifying for me, really. You know, just give us the quiet of the computer room with Peter Wright. And that'd be okay with me. That'd be swell. And I'll tell you, in many days in my life, and this is out of respect for Peter, because I've just kind of talked shit about him, I would rather be with you, Peter, than most people I've ever met. Being weird and completely unappealing to look at as you are, even for another one. But still, in all your ugliness and mine, I was safer with you, person I've ever known. And I know you would find that weird, Peter, but it's true. You're still an okay guy. You know, you realize there are people who will hurt you. And Peter Wright wouldn't hurt a fly. He'd bore you to death talking about computers and graphic novels and video games and role-playing games, but that was about it. And it was interesting because there was a real mind in there, you know, real intelligence, a nice person, good spirit, in an unfortunate body, living in an unfortunate home, in my opinion. There's nothing I was jealous of, you know. It was amazing, even though higher economic status and cleaner, I was never more relieved to come home than after I visited Peter, you know. And to be fair, Curtis Orwick, I went to Curtis Peterson, sorry, went to his house, Curtis Peterson, even I stayed an early version of video games, Atari. You know, he had nice things. It was all in a nice wooden cupboard. Everything was clean. You could open it. Oh, the Atari. All the cords were there. There was no on them. It was like to have a computer, to have technology, was to have something that's clean, if not cleaner than everything else. You know? Whereas if you found my ColecoVision, it was sitting in a dust-eaten corner of our unfinished basement. You know, if someone bought the house years ago, it'd probably still be sitting there gathering dust. Dust was like a part of our lives. You'd sit down and put down your macaroni and cheese and maybe wipe up a few dust balls and float in the air. Someone go into your soup and you're like, different. So no one really ever threw a vacuum over that carpet. The basement was a place that, you know, dust went to die. And so did you. And it was nice and quiet, and there was windows facing the front lawn. And when my dad was mowing the lawn, you'd hear this, and you'd strangely and very ungenerously would think, oh, can you just leave us alone when we watch TV? While your dad works all day, comes home, it's doing yard work. You know, it's disgusting, really. It's completely barbaric and wrong. But, you know, and it's just a passing moment. But really, you're also content. There's the sound of grass. At some point, you'd probably go out there and you'll say, come on, help me clean up the grass, and you will, and it all ends well. And speaking of returning to events in my life, I wouldn't mind returning to someday when my dad's mowing the lawn. Not the day he cuts his toe, perhaps, but every other day. He was good at it. You know, it showed he had a sense of order. And that was a big deal for people, I know, now and then. A sense of order. I've been kind of strange in how I've delegated order, places of order in my life. I don't, as my mom would suggest, wipe a cloth over my pants to clean the dirt off of them, because I know the next day they're just going to get dirty again. Because I know why they're dirty. Because down here there's a fallen tree, and the city hasn't cut it, and so you have to crawl under it. And I'm going to get dirty doing that, because mud is dirty. And to me, in my strange life, which you might think is strangely indulgent, mud is just mud. Good, clean mud, you know? Like, hey, the worst thing that can happen to someone is that your knees would get money. That's a good day for everybody. How many fucking human beings would trade their lives with mine in a fucking second? So look at my dirty knees and think, good luck, you lucky bastard, right? That I've had time to get my knees dirty today. Hey? And your children come home and their knees are dirty. It's like, oh fuck, I know they're happy. You know? A children with dirt on them. A child with dirt is a happy child. I'd like nothing more than to sit on my ass in the mud and play with sticks. Or get my rocket ship to go into the air. Things that could take a whole fucking day of my life. Like learning how to build three-dimensional objects with Lego by myself. And just how fucking satisfying that was. Nothing of the engineer in me, because that would mean having a real job and having the kind of intelligence to become an engineer and all the work, which I didn't want. I loved figuring shit out. I loved making leaps. I had created something for myself, and that's the purpose of Lego, right? The company motto almost is like to get children to make leaps in terms of what they're doing with their hands and their minds. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to do, right? Way too expensive, but beautiful. And no one was around to help me, but I did make a kind of leap. And we never followed the instructions. We just had tons of Lego, like a lot of people. And if I was at home by myself, I'd make shit with it. I loved it. I built ships that came out of my ships. I used to have a chalkboard donated to our rec room, the place where we played the dirty video games. Made everything dirty. the sofa from some, throwaway society. It's just this weird vomit yellow green. But yet, one of the safest places in the world if you just went and lay down there. And I go back there in a heartbeat because when I didn't care how clean our couches was, I just loved being at home. I loved it all the more because in ways I didn't yet know, it wasn't a safe home. And you get kind of attached to things, really attached. And you see other children that have wonderful homes and they're not nearly as attached to them. They go to ski trips. They'd force me to go to a trip with the local church group. And it was basically like Schindler's List in my mind. I was like one of the Jews being put on a train. That's how much I hated it. I just hated it. With such dread. I couldn't believe my father would make me do it. But couldn't you read my body language? So eventually, if people don't read your body language, they're going to really show you they can't. It's like, oh shit. You're doing everything to be as patient. Imagine meeting someone in the street and you put up with them with patience, and they tell you to sit down and do this and do that. And then you're starting to get more and more terrified. And it's like, come on now, just get in my car. We're going to go, right? And that's what it felt like to me. Like I was being groomed to do something I really didn't want to do by people who should have known how uncomfortable I looked. And that I could be so safe saying, no, I don't want to. And they would say, okay, we see in your body, you really don't want to. But, let's not then, Okay, let's not, my son. Because I love you. Thank you, Dad. I'll never ask you to live there again. One day, though, with respect, I'd like to find out why you're so afraid of me. And I'm going to tell you what I think because I've lived in the world a while. I have an idea why you might feel that way. There are different kinds of people. They're from a different economic class as us. They're clearly way more comfortable with each other than you are. They already know each other. They've known each other for years. And you're not part of their little club, are you? And that must be scary for you, right? On top of the fact that you're away from your home and family. You have to pretend and you can't, my son, because you're too honest. That you just don't want to go home in a heartbeat. But I'm sorry, son, to expose you to such an awkward thing that could only really unfavorable circumstances to you, in an environment where you're least equipped to do anything about it. I'm sorry. And that's what I wanted my dad to say to me. And that's what I would say to my son. And that's what I'd say to my dad.